by for Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Holmes.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors is on now. Big thanks to all of our guests today. We've got a great show, so thank you so much for tuning in. We'll start today, as we do every week, with Wyoming Game and Fish Department, the organization that ensures we have great hunting and fishing throughout the state of Wyoming. Janet Millick is the information specialist for the Casper region, and today we have Matt Hahn, who is the Casper Fisheries Supervisor, looking over all the fisheries we have here in the Casper area. Last week we were touching on how ice affects a lot of the fish in the fisheries, and this week we want to talk more about frazzle ice and how frazzle ice affects the North Platte River and all the fish that are in there. Matt, can you give us a little insight on what frazzle ice really is?
Yeah, so frazzle ice, you don't usually get it on lakes. It's more of a thing that pops up in rivers where you have a turbulent flow. And basically it's as the water's flowing down, going through riffles, you get turbulence, and the water can actually become super cooled, which means the temperature of the water actually gets below freezing, and not by very much, by a tenth of a degree or so below freezing. But because the turbulence is keeping the water mixing, it doesn't have a chance to freeze. When it gets cold enough, you'll get these little micro ice crystals that start to form in the water column, and that's what they call frazzle ice. Those tiny little ice crystals are way less than a millimeter in diameter, and they can build up in the river, and they stay in suspension because even though ice floats, they're so small that it doesn't take a whole lot of current to keep them in suspension. What happens is they start sticking to stuff. They'll stick to the bottom, they'll stick to each other, they'll stick to vegetation, whatever. And as that builds up on the bottom of the river, you get kind of a reverse. Typically you think ice forms on the surface and gets thicker. Well, anchor ice will actually start forming on the bottom of the river and grow up. And that can cause all kinds of problems. You have brown trout eggs. They're in the gravel this time of year. Being a fall spawn fish, they lay the eggs into a nest in the gravel in the fall, and those eggs kind of hang out in the gravel all winter and hatch in the spring. Well, when you get anchor ice covers up those redds or those nests where the eggs are, it can suffocate the eggs. Another thing it can do is as it builds up, of course, because ice being buoyant, it starts building up on the bottom. When it gets thick enough, it'll then float, and it'll take everything it's stuck to with it. So it'll actually pick up sediment from the bottom of the river and float it to the surface, and then move it downstream. And anything that was in that sediment goes along with it. So when you have really cold winters like we've had, getting wet way below zero like this, it tends to really favor that formation of frazzle ice in the river. And tailwater rivers like the North Platte here are a lot more susceptible to that than an undammed river. An undammed river, usually you get shelf ice formation, which is just, the river's frozen on the surface that insulates the water from that really cold air. But in a tailwater river, because it's coming out of the dam at, 40 some degrees, you don't typically get that shelf ice formation. So that's where on those really cold nights, it's a lot more prone to produce that frazzle ice.
Very important of why you don't get on any ice that may be formed on the North Platte. I mean, staying away from that during the ice is probably more of a better idea. Oh, yeah, you bet. The currents and everything else going on under the ice, you just can't ever predict what the thickness is. And a lot of the ice that forms on the river is frazzle ice that has clumped together, and you see it forms slush, that's floating on the surface. And when that gets to a constriction, either, say a shallow riffle or a bend in the river, and it starts clumping together, and if it's cold enough, that'll freeze into a solid shelf that looks like shelf ice, but it's not. It's just all frozen together frazzle ice, which is full of air pockets and really has no structural integrity whatsoever. So you could have a layer of frazzle ice on the surface that's a foot thick, and you take one step on it and just go right through. So You mentioned that with the frazzle ice that the eggs can be affected. What about the fish that are in that particular area? Does it affect them? Does it push them out to a different location?
Yeah, it sure does. There was a lot of research done on ice effects, both in and outside of Wyoming. A lot of it was done back in the 80s and 90s. And they found a lot of definite negative impacts of frazzle ice on fish populations, and it through two means. There's obviously the physical, the ice scouring the bottom and destroying eggs and embryos that are still in the river, not to mention invertebrates, which is what they depend on for food. But there's also a physical displacement that happens. Fish in the wintertime are seeking out slower velocity water because water's cold, their metabolism's slower. So think about the river. The trout want to be in the slowest, deepest holes in the river in the wintertime. When you start getting anchor ice formation and frazzle ice, it's causing changes to how the water is flowing through those pools. So as you get more anchor ice buildup, the water has to go somewhere. So it gets squeezed between these areas of anchor ice, which increases the velocity to the point where the fish are forced to seek out other places to hide. There was one study done, I think it was in Montana, where they found a lot of times that when you get the anchor ice formation, it increases the level of the river because of the damming effect, and it rewaters a lot of side channels that would normally not be flowing at winter flows, and the fish will go into those side channels to seek refuge because there's less flow there. But then when the anchor ice breaks up and the water level drops, it strands all those fish in those side channels. So you can directly lose fish from the population through just displacement from their preferred habitat. And another one that's a little harder to visualize, but is found to be a significant population influencer in the wintertime, is just stress response. When fish get displaced out of where they want to be, there's, it's just like you can get stressed about various things, and there's the physiological response to increased stress that can reduce the fitness of the fish and their ability to reproduce and things like that. And so, wintertime is stressful for pretty much all wildlife, and fish are definitely not immune to that stressor as well. So real cold winters like this can definitely have a negative impact on fish populations in the river, I guess, is the long story short.
And we've talked before where the fish can get stressed in the summer just as much as they can in the winter, I suppose. And Matt, you definitely have a really tough job. I mean, managing these fisheries is not easy.
There is a lot more that goes into managing fisheries populations in Wyoming than people realize, right? Like how many people think about, the ice formation. Is it forming on the top? Is it forming on the bottom? So the habitat of fish, it is all something that these guys continually consider. And that also plays into the types of fish that are stocked into certain areas, whether they will survive or not.
Well, it definitely is a science. And Matt, Janet, we do appreciate all that you do, especially when it comes to seeing that our fisheries remain some of the best in the country. Matt, Janet, thank you guys so much. Janet, stick around for just a second. We're going to have you back to talk about this Conservationist Award that's up for grabs for kids. It's coming up on Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
And we're back. It's Drew and Janet Millick hanging around. And Wyoming's such a great state to be involved in conservation. And when you start the kids young, it inspires them to grow up and take care of the conservation efforts. And Janet, you guys have an award that is up for grabs.
That's right, Drew. The Wyoming Youth Conservationist of the Year Award, which is a really great award that the Wyoming Game and Fish Department is giving out this year, that anyone across the state of Wyoming can nominate someone that they know who is 18 years or younger. So really a pretty active youth in the conservationist world. And it's not someone who's necessarily, a hunter or those sorts of things. It can be anyone who really has a passion for habitat, for example. If they really want to work on doing some habitat restoration or fence removal, if they've seen an area maybe where fences needed a little bit of help getting fixed up or a little bit of help getting removed, whatever the situation might be. It is a great opportunity to nominate those kids that are active in the outdoors, to really give them some recognition for what they've done.
And it's fun because there are so many opportunities in Wyoming. I mean, if you think about, New Jersey or some of those East Coast states, they don't have the opportunity that we have here. And really, it's limitless as far as getting involved in our state.
It really is. And while the Wyoming Game and Fish Department may not have a project for every kid in the world, because a lot of that stuff is dependent on where you are, there is always something going on with a state agency or with a Boy Scout club or, something along those lines that really can get kids out and get them involved. And so we really do encourage people just to check out their local communities. Again, this is across the state. This is not just something for Casper. And so to think about those kids who really have made that extra effort to do something good. I know that there's groups of kids that clean around Desmet Pond prior to our Youth Kids Fishing Day that goes on in June. And so even things like that are things that are worth thinking through and maybe need a nomination.
If someone has that desire to go above and beyond, and maybe they want to go to a small pond here in town like Desmet and pick up trash or do a project like this, do they need to get permission?
The Wyoming Game and Fish Department does not manage the lands around Desmet Pond, just the fish that are in it. And so absolutely the city of Casper is somebody that you do need to contact. And picking up of the trash can sometimes be a little precarious because you want to make sure that you're doing things safely and not, putting your health in harm's way, depending on where you are and what you're doing.
Jenny, you and I were chatting earlier that another way that you can get involved and help conservation is becoming an instructor for the safety courses.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of those things that there's lots of things that the Wyoming Game and Fish Department does that people associate back with hunting. And so one of the big things that always rings true is our hunter education or our hunter safety courses that go on across the state. And right now, coming up over the next year is a great opportunity for people who might be interested in becoming a hunter education instructor. We'll be doing some workshops where they can get trained up. They can learn from our Cheyenne folks, our hunter education coordinator, who will be coming across the state to different locations. And so I really want to encourage people to get online, find out a little bit more about that hunter education piece. And if you're interested, it's a great way to really get in touch with kids across the state, to really return a lot to Wyoming. We all, most of us are in Wyoming because we love the out of doors. And this is a great way to make sure that we keep Wyoming just as fantastic as always and safe and with great ethics, and become a hunter education instructor.
Checking out WGFD.wild.gov, a great way to get involved with that. Or if you have more questions specifically about this, you can contact Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Just give them a call and ask them any questions you want. Janet, thanks again.
Thanks, Drew.
Next up, we'll check in with Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
Welcome back to the show. It's Drew and Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And Brian, we are at a stalemate now because goose season has ended, but that doesn't mean that there's not hunting going around here in Wyoming.
No, there's if you're a bird hunter, there's still bird farms that are opened up, and River Bend just outside of town is really convenient, and that's easy to get to, and always fun to chase those birds out there. And of course, there's guys that are chasing coyotes and other critters. So yeah, there's plenty to be done still.
So when we have gone pheasant hunting in the past, there hasn't been lots of snow.
Right.
It's a different story when you're going out there with lots of snow. The birds are a lot easier to see, I would imagine.
Right.
But then, you got to be prepared in a different way going
around town. That snow blows off in most of those areas. So we still get the birds. We still find them in the same spots under those sagebrushes and the cattails or, along the river and that kind of stuff. But the last couple of weeks, it's been a little bit tougher to get around.
when you come into Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, you're going to go on a pheasant hunt, or maybe you're going to go on a coyote hunt. This time of year, you need maybe a separate set of equipment that you would normally not have with you, and they can pick that all up here at Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, the biggest thing is just trying to plan for the weather, and try to keep that wind off your back, and so you don't get frostbite and those kind of things. So, good pair of boots and hand warmers and gloves, and we've had a pretty rough winter so far, and it might be time to replace some of those things.
One of the things that I really have heard over the last couple of years is, oh well, we don't have winters like we used to have, and this year it seems though everybody is being knocked on their butt because it's back.
Yeah, it's been kind of hard to keep up with, and so that heavy snow, and then you got the wind that keeps piling up in front of the doors and around things. It's definitely been a challenging winter.
So make sure that you're fully prepared for whatever Mother Nature could throw at you. And if you're coming in to get prepared for your pheasant hunt or maybe a coyote hunt, the equipment here is perfect, especially if you need a new shotgun.
Yeah, for shotguns, ammunition, if you're looking at coyote calls or any predator calls, that stuff, is definitely easy to get a hold of. Not going to break the bank. There's a lot of good options, especially in shotguns. At everything from $300 pump shotguns to all your semi-automatics. So there's still a lot to do, and we've got good inventory of everything right now.
So if you're going out and you're heading out on a different hunt. Maybe you're looking at the coyotes, and you mentioned the calls and the electronic calls and whatnot, and talking with Game and Fish, the rabbit population is not as popular or big as it used to be, and that probably would be a almost golden ticket if you were to have one of those calls if you're trying to catch those coyotes.
Well, it certainly helps guys be a lot more effective, right? But then again, you still have to be in an area that there's those critters around. So the electronic calls they're really kind of fun. There's lots of different sounds that are pre-programmed into those things where you kind of start playing around with pup calls or squeal calls or whatever else, and just seeing how the animals respond to those calls, it's kind of entertaining.
What's a good way, and I know we've talked a lot about maps and having the maps, and the Onyx maps is a free download and really kind of gives you some inside scoop of what's going on in that particular area, and which you just said it's a good idea to know what's there.
Yeah, the Onyx maps really is kind of, I think that's the leading, way to find public and private land and landowners and that kind of stuff. Identifies the hunt management areas, the walk-in areas, that kind of stuff. So, between, what maps are available, BLM maps, even just the RAND atlases, that kind of stuff, you use that to kind of plan your hunt ahead of time. You're gonna find some areas that are huntable, and you'll be able to get away from people.
Come on in, check them out, Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, for all of your outdoor needs.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
Welcome back to the show. Thank you again for tuning in. And as always, you can go listen to all of our episodes at the radio station's app. We've got a lot of good stuff there that you can learn if maybe you are just moving to the area, or maybe you're a professional, lived here forever, and just looking for something new. Get over and check that out. Now, Brian, we're to the point now. It's, I want to say late winter, but it's right in the middle of winter, and we're going to have a little bit of a warm-up here, and then it'll get cold again and snow again, but looking forward to spring and fishing. And Glendo, we've talked a little bit over the last few days about some of the things that are happening at Glendo. They're really kind of spice it up down there.
Yeah, the park superintendent's doing a really good job of trying to accommodate the needs of, as many different user groups as possible. And it looks like they're, got some bids out for some new docks. The last couple of years, they put a bike course in there, and they've got an archery range in there, and they've got the Quonset huts, and looks like they're going to put some wall tents in over in Elkhorn. So some kind of neat, new, different things down there. Just kind of, keep the activities going, and to give you something else to do instead of just being on the water.
But being on the water is one of the main attractions of Glendo, and with the winter that we're having, all of the snow that we're having, what are you expecting to see come melt off?
Well, it just depends on when it melts off, right? Water temperature kind of dictates, water flow dictates the walleye spawn when that all happens. I think usually around 45 to 50 degrees when you start seeing the spawn and the walleyes really kind of transition, out of the main lake, maybe up the river or anywhere where there's some water flow and tributaries coming in. But yeah, it just kind of depends on when that happens. Usually that's, mid-April to late April, 1st of May type of stuff. But, water levels down there is going to be pretty consistent. I think that, Glendo has a water management plan that kind of prevents that water from getting, too deep into the trees. Like, back in the day, we used to be able to, fish 100 yards into those trees and find some pockets and get out of the sun and catch those walleyes and stuff transitioning through the trees. But with the new water management plan, I think they try to maintain that water level at 100%, and when it gets over that, they dump it pretty quickly. So, yeah, it just kind of depends on when this ice is going to come off. With the water, with the runoff, Glendo tends to rise pretty quick, so that affects the edges of the water, of the ice, and then the wind will help break that up as well. But some of these higher mountain lakes, or higher elevation lakes anyways, like Seminole and Pathfinder, we could see ice on there for quite a while.
Does it affect your planning going into that? Because obviously if the water's coming down, then maybe it's going to stay colder a lot longer than it has. And
it does. It doesn't really. I mean, it's just a matter of, following the patterns of the fish and what they're doing. There's almost always, fish on the main lake. Not every fish goes up to spawn. Not every fish, transitions from one end of the lake to the other. There's a lot of fish on the main lake. So how we fish generally, if it's pre-spawn, we'll do a lot of jigs and minnows or slip bobbers and minnows, something a real natural presentation with live bait. There's some guys that will still pull crankbaits, because that's just what they like doing, and so they're still imitating a minnow bite, and they'll have some success as well. But
a couple of years ago, we had that freak snow in April and May that really kind of jarred everything up again. But was something like that with the ice that we have now? I mean, a late spring or I guess late winter snow could really put a kibosh on a lot of things.
Well, definitely for runoff purposes, kind of muddies up the waters, and then if we've got heavy runoff, it takes a lot of the debris that's on the shorelines and it'll wash it down into the reservoir. So there's a lot of times on that, first ice off that you have to be really careful about how you're driving your boat across the middle of the lake, because all of a sudden you could come across a big tree that's just floating across the lake. So, and it all just kind of depends on the runoff and how fast it happens, and because when we get a lot of melt off real fast, that runoff into those big reservoirs can cause some havoc on the shorelines.
So you definitely want to make sure that you check the conditions before you head out. And very quickly, you were telling me a story about some eagles that are kind of being pains in the butt, and maybe a pretty big year for eagles and issues.
Yeah, I don't know. Last weekend was our last weekend for goose season, and a friend of mine was down around Glen Rock area and shot a couple geese out of a flock and had let them set in the field. He had other geese work in the area, so he let those sit, and before long, all of a sudden, an eagle comes down and grabs that goose and flies off with it. And then another eagle comes right behind him and flies off with the second goose. So it's no surprise to a lot of the ranchers in the area, especially during calving season, or this particular rancher down there raises a lot of sheep. So it's always a concern that those birds of prey are going to take some of our sheep or calves.
What about when we're on the water? Is that an increasing problem that you see, or that you've had any run-ins with them?
I've seen an eagle up at Pathfinder. There'd be like a trout or a small walleye that maybe was floating or took a deep hook or whatever. But I've seen eagles come down and grab a fish and pick it up and then take it over to shore and sit there and chew on it. So it's pretty neat to watch.
I remember at Glendo last year, right boats were just taking off and there was an eagle floating over the water. It's really cool to see, but then when they start taking your fish, that's a problem.
Better the fish than our dogs out of our backyard.
Yeah,
so
well, that's true. That is true. Well, if you're planning to get out and start fishing as soon as you can get out on the water, make sure you come over here and check it out at Rocky Mountain Discount Sport.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors, and we greatly appreciate you listening. If you've missed any of our shows, you can find them in the radio station app on demand. Very simple to find and listen to all of the shows. And every week we like to bring folks into the show that make an impact in the outdoors in our area. And one of those organizations is Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing. And we have Bruce Chandler, who is here in Casper and part of this great organization. And Bruce, we appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Drew. It's always a pleasure to share some time with you and have the opportunity to let the local community know what we're doing here to help out our veterans.
And that's the key is your organization is 100% all for the veterans, and really it's taken care of by this program.
That's correct. We have in the Casper area alone, I have over 120 registered veterans, mostly all are disabled. Actively, I have 77 veterans that participate on a regular basis in our activities, which, as you mentioned, include fishing outings, overnight trips, fly tying, educational classes, and rod building. And right now we're in the midst of having our winter classes, doing our rod building. We meet every Tuesday evening at the VFW post out on Bryan Stock Trail, and they're producing some beautiful fly rods, which they'll be getting to use out on the water hopefully this spring.
You know, and that's another great part of this organization is when possibly you can't get out on the water to fish or go out on an outing, you still have those weekly get-togethers where, you know, these men and women that rely on this camaraderie that is offered by Project Healing Waters can go all year with these classes. And you said you're in the process of fly rod building. Is there a kit that they get that they slowly just kind of craft their rod?
Pretty much, yes. That would be accurate. We have a lot of our suppliers that enable us to order the different increments and parts that are needed to build a fly rod. They do come as kits. I also order individual parts for folks. So, yeah, we have everything provided to the veterans, and of course, everything is provided at no charge. We have all the equipment. We have the expertise. We have some highly experienced volunteers that assist the beginners in producing these rods. And right after the rod making, which should be finished in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting our fly tying session, and we'll be meeting once again every week at the VFW and getting everybody set up with the fly tying vices and all the materials needed for fly tying.
It has to be a little something extra to go out on a fly fishing trip and know that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into making that rod and tying those flies so that, you know, you're 100% the reason that you caught that fish.
Exactly. Very well said. It's very rewarding experience for me personally to see these veterans engage in the programs and then to enjoy the results of their labor. This is my 10th year with Project Healing Waters, and every year I see the organization growing. We have over 300 national chapters, and each chapter does engage in these programs that I've previously mentioned. So the program has developed over the years into just a fantastic outlet for our veterans. It's an ongoing process. We still have, unfortunately, over 20 veteran suicides daily. And that's the crux of what we try to do, is to get the veterans involved with the programs, give them an outlet, give them the camaraderie and the opportunity to sit and visit with other veterans, and kind of interpersonal counseling, I would call it. And it seems to be working out pretty well.
Bruce, you mentioned that there are over 20 veterans per day that are taking their own lives. Are you seeing a drop or maybe a rise in the morale when they get involved with an organization like Project Healing Waters?
Absolutely. Over the years, we've had some personal encounters and opportunities with veterans that are just kind of in a very tenuous situation, psychologically, physically, emotionally. And I have seen some positive results. We work hand in hand with the Vet Center located here in Casper, and the good folks up there that do a lot of the personal counseling with our veterans. We're working hard to try to get those numbers down, but unfortunately, they're staying pretty constant. It's as a result of the Gulf War and Afghanistan and the Iraq conflict and all. A lot of those veterans come home after serving 3, 4, 5 tours overseas, and they just come home kind of lost and looking for some direction, some security, some acceptance. So that's basically what we do with Project Healing Waters, is extend our ability to interact with them and try to give them a resource to help them heal.
How long of a process does it take to get started? Once someone finds out about the program and decides they want to get in, is it fairly seamless and quick?
We have a website that enables a particular person can contact me either by email or direct by phone, and we can do a registration of this person pretty much over the phone in about 15 or 20 minutes and get them registered into our CRM program. We take down some basic information, military background, service-related questions, a little bit of personal information, and then they're officially registered in the program. I put them on our contact list, so they get the regular emails and listings of the classes and trips and everything that's entailed. So it's a very easy and seamless program.
Once you're involved, and you said you've been here 10 years, so you've been able to accompany a lot of these veterans. What does it mean to you to see an organization like this helping and reaching out like it does?
Personal rewards are tremendous for me, being able to contribute back to the veterans. I'm a Vietnam veteran myself. I have a 100% disability rating, and I pretty much stayed, I would say, in the closet with my personal issues as a result of my service back in 1966 to 1968. And a few years back, I met one of the principals in Project Healing Waters, as I mentioned, about 10 years ago, and he invited me to join the program. On a personal level, with helping other people, it's just been a wonderful, I would say, cathartic experience to be able to work one-on-one with the veterans.
Well, Bruce, we definitely thank you for your service, and thank you for all you do for the veterans here. I know that I've personally spoken to some that are involved, and it changed their life, and I love hearing that there are great things being done for our men and women that served our country. You can go check out, again, projecthealingwaters.org. Bruce, thank you again for sitting in with us, and we hope that the spring of 23 is huge for you guys.
We're looking forward to a wonderful season. Drew, thank you for your participation and support, and to your parent company for their ongoing support. We appreciate it a great deal. and look forward to a continuing relationship with you and your company.
Absolutely our pleasure, Bruce. Thank you so much. ProjectHealingWaters.org is where you can go. There's another ice fishing derby coming up in the Sheridan area. We talk with the Rotary Club next.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.
Welcome in again to Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors, where we love ice fishing, and this year has been an exceptional year for ice fishing all over the state of Wyoming, here at Glendo and Pathfinder, over at other lakes and reservoirs here in the state, and one of those is up in Sheridan with the Desmet Lake, and there's a big ice derby coming up on the 25th, and we have Gary Dobney and Rob Forster of the Rotary Club there, and you guys have been putting this on for about 3 years now. And have you seen the size getting a little bit bigger here and there?
This is our third year. From the first to the second year, we had a large number of people that joined us. A lot of that has to do with weather. We had great weather last year, and we're crossing our fingers that we get the same kind of weather this year. But so far, the pre-registration is about 4 times what we saw last year.
One thing that I like is it's a day tournament. You could come up in the morning and you're going home that evening. So it really is nice to be able to get it all in one day.
We want to make it easy, not only for the participants, but for us Rotarians that are putting this tournament on. And we got great prizes. We've got for 4 different species of fish. The longest fish, we're not going by weight, so you don't have to worry about putting lead weights into your fish.
Yeah.
No cheating.
We're just using length. And so the longest fish in the 4 categories are perch, walleye, kokanee salmon, and trout. The longest fish gets $1,000. Second longest fish gets $300, and the third largest fish is $200. And if we have ties, then we don't split the prize winnings. You each will get the full amount. In addition to that, we just put in last Thursday, we put in 200 tagged trout, and these trout are unbelievably healthy, big. They go from 4.5 pounds to 2.5 pounds. These are really great fish to catch. So those fish will be worth $60, Drew. And one more thing, the longest fish of the day we weigh, and we have an insurance policy, and if the last 2 digits of the weight are the same as what's in a secret envelope, then that person will win $25,000.
Wow.
Kind of like a hole-in-one prize.
That's 1 in 100. 1 in 100 chance.
Yeah.
How's this going to benefit the club with everybody coming in and getting to be a part of this tournament?
Well, that's the beauty of it. Financially, the club doesn't at all. I mean, every dime is going to go through the Sheridan Rotary Foundation, which is our charitable giving portion of our club. And the recipients from the foundation are Sheridan local, Sheridan charity and nonprofits. So really, when you take a look at the Rotary 4-way test of everything we think and say and do, this ice fishing derby really matches right up with that. The camaraderie is fantastic. The Sheridan High School Interact Club, which is the equivalent of a Rotary Club at the high school level. Those students are going to be out doing concessions out there, and they're going to be raising funds themselves. And I've been able to get our local Albertsons to donate the hot dogs, and our local Walmart to donate the hot dog buns. And an anonymous Rotarian donated all of the meat for the chili. And so it's really going to be a good opportunity for those kids to raise some funds.
It's going to be a great time. Again, the 25th of February, Lake Desmet, up near Sheridan. And where can folks go to get more information and even get their entry fee taken care of?
It's all done online, SheridanRotary.org and /Ice Fishing Derby. You can also go in person to Rocky Mountain Discount Sports here in Sheridan and sign up in person. We give out a lot of door prizes. If you sign up, there's a good chance you're going to win something. And we've got some great door prizes too.
Gary and Rob, we do appreciate everything, and we wish you the best of luck on the 25th.
Thank you, Drew. Thanks for the
Thank you, Drew.
marketing.
You got it, guys. Thank you again. That's going to do it for this episode of Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors. If you have a question or you have a concern or you have a show topic you'd like us to discuss, just hit us up in the radio station's app. Click the message button, and we greatly appreciate it. That's another show in the books. Have a great week.
Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors.